have a few amendments to the agenda. First, I'd like to change the property owner comment time period to 15 minutes as normal. That was my error. Apologize for that. Second is to, right after adoption of the agenda, to have a motion or a vote on approving the resolution declaring emergency and waiving April dues as presented by Richard, our attorney. And then a second agenda item under new business to be add agenda item to discuss further emergency measures in relation to the coronavirus. Any further changes to the agenda? If none, we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion stated.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. So we have our agenda. So we'll move into our approving the resolution declaring emergency and waiving April dues as presented by Richard, our attorney. Just need a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the resolution declaring emergency and waiving April dues as presented by Rich Davis, our attorney.
Second.
Can we approve that by acclamation?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we will move now into our announcements. Any announcements, board
Mr.
members?
President, I have an announcement. We have the board vacancy that's been posted as being open. Applications are being accepted until 4/20. This has been posted on the Sudden Valley website. It'll be going in the April views. And I'll ask them to do it again. So far, we have had no applications, but given the nature of what's going on in the world right now, that doesn't surprise me. But I'll start putting some stuff out on the Facebook pages too and see if staff can maybe refresh that announcement on the SBCA website.
Thank you, Linda. That's great.
Hello.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I just see a bunch of people's stuff that was muted. I was just checking, see if everybody was still there.
Sorry, I have like a really loud hound dog, so I got to keep.
Oh, that's okay.
It's also nice for people who can't hear with background noise to mute so that we don't hear the background noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good housekeeping item. Thanks, Steffi. Yeah, if we're not talking, just go on mute. Good idea.
Linda, when did you want to see that advertisement?
Pardon, can you repeat?
Sure. When did you want to see
Is
that
everyone
advertisement?
Just whenever you can put it up there again. We just get so many announcements that it gets lost.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it tonight.
Thanks.
Andrew, do you want to go over? We'll start the COVID-19 stuff as far as the announcements go.
I think that sounds great. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, Norm, it's all yours. Norm, we can't hear you.
Hello.
Norm, are you there? Oh, there he is.
No, I still can't hear you, Norm. No.
How about now?
Gotcha.
Okay, so through that technical hurdle. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and present an overview of what things are looking like from the Unified Command perspective, what we're doing here and the association to comply, obviously, with the governor's proclamations. Some very basic statistics because everybody is already aware of the status of the virus as it is nationwide and also globally and county. And then at the end, if there's any questions, I'll answer them, or if I don't have an answer for them, I will try to get those for you. So currently, in the state of the county, there's 66 confirmed cases with four deaths. That's as of the statistics posted by Unified Command this morning as well as last night. Everybody's aware of the recent events at the care centers in the county, which has contributed greatly to the amount of cases confirmed in testing as well as the fatalities. Washington State, we're over 3,000 as of today for confirmed cases with 133 deaths reported as of last evening. However, that has increased. The expectations from the state and the county and Unified Command that we will see an increase in both the number of cases and confirmation as well as fatalities. As testing becomes more and more available, you will start to see the cases and confirmed cases start to climb as well. The Whatcom County Unified Command Center was activated and it's fully activated right now. It is currently functioning on a 7-day operational period, and they will continue to function for the duration of this pandemic. As you're aware, the governor on the 23rd issued a proclamation to all Washingtonians to stay home and stay safe for, as he stated, for 2 weeks, which was expiring midnight on April 8th. However, he also said today in his news conference that could be extended. The goal of the stay at home, stay safe, and the proclamations that went with it about no gatherings, and for continued use of social distancing, and then as well as the decisions that were made on what's essential and not essential is to flatten out the bell curve for the virus. They are continually monitoring that data and seeing where they're at, but currently it's not looking as though they're making as much ground as they had hoped. Latest statistics and modeling by Unified Command indicates that on or about the 31st of March, they anticipate the county having 161 confirmed cases. So it's still on an upward trajectory. This is a quickly evolving event, and it will continue to be so. We started planning for this event because of looking at the what was occurring nationally, and particularly in the state of California when San Francisco had issued their shelter in place, and we started looking at the data that we had and also conferring with Whatcom Unified, Department of Emergency Management, and other agency partners that we have, and started looking at how we would apply something similar if it occurred here in the county, and as we know it, and now it's statewide with the governor's proclamation. So that started about 10 or 11 days ago, and we use those tools and CDC reference material as well to how to try to be ready to implement this, because for us with resources, not having the resources of a municipality, time is everything. So this more forward thinking that we can be, the more that we can be ready for an eventuality which has occurred. part of the things that we have been accomplishing or been working with since the governor's proclamation has come into effect is working with our community as a whole, working with some of our agency partners daily, and working with Unified Command. Part of that, as you may or may not know, has been with the Bellingham School District with their current program where they're providing breakfasts and lunch Monday through Friday at the dance barn. That program is ongoing. It's managed by the school district. We're providing the facility and storage of additional lunches if they have any, and it has picked up each day since it's been in effect. And today they actually distributed 167 meals to children. And the report back from the coordinator is that is expected to increase, and they're making plans for that, and we're trying to support them any way we can. In addition to those things like that, we've also reached out to our own community, the community cupboard. We've been asking if they what we can do to support them. For example, today we took donations down to the dance barn so that could be stocked on their shelves by the volunteers, as well as if there's any cascading messages that that organization, which is all volunteer, would like to put out. We certainly will do that for them or help them. We're also, like I said, working with our agency partners and with Whatcom Unified Command. We're providing information and requesting information on what's called business reentry and the impacts to Sudden Valley's business overall. We've submitted and been accepted by the FEMA grant portal, awaiting the the go and the start for that. We've also been asked to continue to collect expenses and expenditures and impacts and loss of revenue caused by the COVID-19 response, and to track that in a uniform manner that the rest of the county is doing for the day that they're going to ask for those numbers. And we're reaching out to them daily to make sure that we've got a good process going forward with that. And we try to, of course, address concerns that the residents put forward with the stay home, stay safe policy and the proclamations, as it has impacted everyone. So with that also, like I said, we're supporting our local community, for example, with Christ Church, assisting them by providing access so they can do a web streaming service to continue that process for the community as well. And most of the day is spent in liaison with Whatcom Unified Command and the agency partners associated with it, the City of Bellingham, the Water District, the public schools, South Whatcom Fire, and our residential deputy, as well as the Sheriff's Department as we need it. And also County Councilman Byrd also likes to hear from us pretty often about how things are rolling out here in Sudden Valley. This response is continuing. Latest projections by Whatcom Unified is that they may be stood up as long as June, maybe longer. There's no end date that they're forecasting now because, again, they haven't hit, they believe, the top of that bell curve. And they've also asked us to share to the community that they are continually putting out updated information on their new website, which is www.whatcomcovid.com. It's designed to be one-stop shopping for the response, and they encourage everyone that may have a question to go there. They update their press releases, what the next days are looking like, and any information that's being put out by the Joint Information Center. So we are continuing to, as we get tasking or things change, try to implement those to be in compliance with who's asking, which at this point been the governor's office primarily. And with that, if there's any questions, I certainly will try to answer them, or I will get information back with the right people that do have the answer. Okay.
Hey, this is Andrew. I have a question, Norm. First off, thanks for all your hard work through all of this. My goodness, it's really helpful, and thanks for your presentation. On the FEMA portal, how large of an administrative task is that to seek reimbursement through that portal? And second to that is, what kind of reimbursables do you anticipate we can receive?
Well, we have been advised, and I'm going to do a name drop here. Mike knows him, by Henry Renteria. He used to be an association resident. He now lives in Bellingham, but he's still an ally and a resource. He used to be the emergency manager for the state of California. As far as administrative burden goes, his advice, and also coming from the business impact, is to track every expenditure. So that is what we are currently doing. And how much of it will be approved or not approved, that is a decision of FEMA, but typically you submit it all with your county agency in charge of the response, which will be DE, Department of Emergency Management, and they will approve up to about 75% normally. In addition to that, there are small business administration opportunities of low cost, or in some cases no cost loans that can be applied for. The president has changed up a lot of the SBA's guidelines to make it available to all private businesses, regardless of size and or tax structure. So that is also out there, and there's more information coming on that every day, and that is why I reached out to Mr. Renteria, and he is providing information back to us and to me on items we should pay particular attention to. So as to when they're going to want this, the president signed the disaster declaration for Washington State early this week, which means the money will be available. FEMA Region 10, which is we're under, will have to clarify their process, submissions, how that's going to work, and they're still working on that. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, Andrew.
Thanks, Norm.
Mike.
I know, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so, maybe even a little bit more, there was an initiative to try and reach out to find out who in the community had needs. I think it may have been the emergency response team that was working on that to try and find out who we had that may be homebound, who may have medical needs. I know that there is a pretty robust group of fantastic and wonderful volunteers on social media getting things for people. Do you have a sense that, especially in a, with people working from home, that do you feel like we have a good idea of who our really vulnerable people might be in the community right now, and how we might be able to make sure that we're reaching out to them in the case that somebody is stuck at home and ill?
Well, the short answer is, can I give you an idea of the demographics that we're talking about? The answer to that is no. However, as you stated, a lot of the volunteer organizations, as you've seen on social media, have area captains here in both Sudden Valley and also Bellingham and throughout the county. I've reached out to several of the area captains and said if there is an opportunity or need that the association can help to be with or provide, then reach out to either myself or Joe or Lisa, and we'll muster the resources we can. The opportunities for volunteers here countywide are immense in this event. As you've seen with the making of surgical masks, no donations of food, etc. And the Unified Command is trying to also wrestle with that. In fact, they are stood up what's called a Volunteer Management Center, or VMC, to start to try and gather those needs. And we have opportunities to feed that through. But here locally, the traditional sources that people have used are still viable, and they should continue to use those. And if we can assist by transmission of information, and even in many cases, being part of the delivery network, we'll do that. But as far as it being managed out of this office here, the volunteers are kind of stepping in, filling in the gap that has existed, and it is extremely well appreciated by everyone.
Thanks, Norm.
You bet. Any other questions? With that, thank you very much. If there's any questions that you would like to ask later, please feel free to email me or give me a call. I'll certainly, if I don't have the answer, I'll certainly find out. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thanks, Norm.
Yep. Thank you, Norm. That was great. We'll move into our property owner. Well, let me back up. Any further board announcements? Okay, hearing none, we'll move into our property owner comments.
Yeah.
Maybe staff can let us know how we want to handle this.
Sure. I have Nancy who's raised her hand. I presume we'll go ahead and bring her in to talk, and she'll introduce herself as if it was a regular property owner's comment situation. And for the person who's calling us, if you do want to talk, to raise your hand on the phone, it's *9 on your phone. And I'll bring Nancy in now. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, much better interface. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Yep.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. Did this thing work? And it appears to. The second question is, will the Finance Committee place their audio from the last meeting on the website?
I don't know if that's an answer for our IT person or Leslie. I don't know when they get posted.
Yeah.
She wasn't clear. Somebody else, please tell me if it was for me what the question was.
Yeah, Leslie, she asked if the audio from the Finance Committee meeting would be placed on the website.
Again, you're going to have to talk to John about that. I'm not sure what the process is for going forward on that.
Yeah,
for all meetings.
I'll go ahead and step in on that as IT for that. Yeah, we'll get that posted up there for you, Nancy. They're just might take a couple days.
Thank you so much, and I am out.
I'll go ahead and return Nancy to the audience. Okay, and I believe that's all we have for now.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. We'll move into our approval of consent agenda with the meeting minutes from the 23rd of January and February 13th. Need a motion to approve.
Move that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move into the GM report. Go ahead, Joe.
Good evening, everybody. Do you want me to read it, or do you guys want to ask questions? What do you think would be easy?
Let's move into questions.
Okay. The report is submitted. I will answer anyone's questions that you might have, since
Okay.
everything is in there.
So I had a couple.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, hold on. I've got this up on my monitor.
Okay.
One question that I have is on page 6. We have the number of employees by month, and it sounds like a 13-month. And so if we see for March, it's 41. And then as I go down to page 7, and we have FTE headcount by department, the total of those is 31.76 FTEs versus, again, above on page 6 is 41. Can you speak to the difference between those two reports?
Yeah, and Lisa can chime in as well. We do have about 32 full-time employees. Some of those 41 that you see in there would be people that would be returning that are still on payroll. They're just in the system that we know that they're going to be returning.
Okay, I think you've answered that before, and I just wanted to get clarification. So they may not be actually working right now and incurring an expense. Is that an accurate way to think of it?
Yes, I mean, they are on the system, and Lisa could chime in on that as well. They are people who are still on our payrolls, but we do have 32 full-time equivalents.
And what Joe was saying is, what you're saying is 41 people on payroll. So those are people that either for instance, we get people that are seasonal. They live here in the Valley. They get called in to work 2 hours in the pro shop. And that's the first time they've worked in 7 months. They're going to pop up on that, but they are not full-time benefited employees. We only have 19 benefited employees and 23 full-time equivalent employees.
Okay, so then what it is really is, so number of employees is exactly what it says. It's just the number of people, regardless of whether they work 2 hours a month, 2 hours every 6 months, or whatever. And then the FTEs is all of those employees converted to full-time hours
worked.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Exactly, by department.
Yep.
And anybody that you're seeing, and the reason that we keep people in the payroll system, as Joe said, we bring people back season after season, and so it's just more efficient to not completely remove them, especially when we have the opportunity to call them in for an hour or, on an on-call basis. But any employee that we know for sure is not coming back, then they, of course, are deleted from the system.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another one. I'm not sure how much detail I want to go into this, but then under maintenance, we talk about the 46 hours of corrective repair and maintenance, and then we got that report that shows the backlog. And I'm not quite sure how to read it, I guess. And I honestly am not sure what really understanding the detail is, but when I think about backlog, I would think, okay, these are things that haven't been able to get to, but I look at it and I see, for instance, near the very end of the report is Firewise 2020 and roadside cleanup for the month of April. So it's looking forward. I wouldn't consider that backlog, but that's fine. It's not my report. I'm not the one using it, but I guess I'm trying to figure out, and this will be more important when budgeting comes up, what's the key takeaway from this? So how many hours are we actually of work not able to get done that we need to? And why is that? Is it because of timing? Because we had a snowstorm and we have fewer, we have this whole COVID thing going on right now. Is it that even without that, we still need more staff? I guess I'm just kind of trying to understand. And I don't necessarily have an answer now, but for budgeting, it was tough for me last year to really comprehend where we were with maintenance and where we needed to be.
Right.
So I'm just putting it out there.
I mean, if you want to come in and sit down and I can make it, much more clear for you, I would do that if that would put your mind to ease.
Yeah, I'll do that in a month or so. Oh, wait.
Okay.
But yeah, before the budget probably makes sense for me to come
Yeah.
in
Oh,
and-
definitely. Oh, definitely. I please come in before that so we can have that all. When we do go into the budget cycle, I want to make sure that everybody is fully aware that there's any questions that you might have going up for 2020. Please get them to me before we start the process so that I can put those out to our managers and get everything started in the right foot.
Okay, Joe, I might just start an email discussion with you while I'm trying to avoid
Perfect.
person-to-person meetings, but then I would like to sit down with you in the future. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay.
I'd like to say that that's probably a good conversation for everybody. As someone who wanted additional details on that, I agree with what some of Karen said. I'm a little confused as to, I was kind of hoping for a report that shows us, here's what we accomplished this during this general manager's report. Here's what we didn't accomplish, so we can kind of see what's rolling over from month to month in our maintenance backlog and what are these actual tasks that are on there. Is there, obviously we're not having huge volunteer events or anything like that, but is there opportunity for us to try to check some of those boxes off through some of our volunteer programs that we're trying to get started at the wholly wrong time in the world right now?
Yeah, some of that I think probably can be checked off with volunteers. I will get a rolling stock of work out to you guys over the next couple days, if that works. What was completed, what wasn't completed, what's still in SKU, and all that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
Something to follow up on what Karen had to say, Joe, is besides the hours that are in the it says corrective work, there's hours that are here for training at times. Like on the second page of this, there's a couple of guys that have some serious hours of training in here. It looks like 16 hours for one guy and 20 for another. And I don't know that those necessarily belong with corrective work that they're doing because they're not doing work.
Well, they're getting trained to do the work that's going to have to be done. The last thing we want to do, Linda, is put somebody into a situation where it will cause us more damage than good, i.e. Workers' comp claim or something of that nature.
Oh, Joe, I understand that. I just don't know that those sort of hours should be categorized with other things that are like filling a large pothole of asphalt at the entrance to Area Z. It's like they're two different, very, very different things. You have to keep track of the hours. And true, it takes away from the available hours you have for staffing, but it really isn't work. And if it takes away, then that's something you have to look at too. So that's just a point.
Okay.
Hey, Joe,
I'd agree with Linda on that.
No problem. I will have Bruce take that out then.
I raised my hand on that, and I have a question. I guess besides this total corrective hours backlog, what other lists or categories are there? If this is everything, then maybe it's just the title of it that could be a little bit more descriptive, or are there multiple categories of maintenance tasks, several reports like this?
There's several reports. What you saw in the budget cycle last year was a complete breakdown of everything, whether it was a maintenance function, which was a routine, or the daily cleaning schedules from all the buildings. We presented that fully last year in the budget cycle, which I think was the first time that was ever done for the community to see the actual amount of hours and bodies that are needed to complete that.
Right. And so we have basically routine maintenance, and then we had preventive or corrective. Is that the two categories? And so then you're putting training in here based on what it supports. So we can't do this task without the training in order to make sure we can do it safely. I'm guessing that's the thought process to putting that in there. Is there another?
That would be, No, that I would again. Bruce does this that report, and I would say yes, that would be his thing. And the last thing I want to do, and I've talked with this to Bruce, is we don't want to put somebody in a situation that is going to make them unsafe.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm just trying to like, I guess the only other way to put something like that would be maybe if there was an administrative
Administrative line, yeah. We
Yeah.
could put administrative line in there.
maybe. Okay.
Joe,
I
this
got
is Linda.
I got a couple wquestions.
Go wait.
So in that same chart on page 7 that Karen was talking about, there is a weather department under the FTE.
Yeah, we
headcount. What is that?
yeah, we broke that out for the month of January, where the hours were, we broke it up for weather for the snowstorm.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part? It kind of blipped out on me.
I can help with that, if
Okay.
that's okay, Joe.
Sure.
We all of the hours that are attributed to snow removal get put to this weather department. Obviously, we didn't have snow last month, but we did have sweeping that was attributed to the snow event. And so any hours that are spent clearing because of the snow event are charged to the weather department. Even obviously, we don't actually have a weather department, but it's a code so that we know how much we're spending on snow removal.
Okay. And then, so to kind of piggyback on that, so that is sweeping. And then looking down under, let's see, sorry, I'm looking down under the maintenance section on page 13, there's the road sand sweeping. First round of 2020's road sweeping has been completed. I'm wondering where do we sand? Or sorry, where do we sweep? What roads do we get done?
Oh, we have a road map that shows all the
Yeah.
streets that have been swept and when, and we can certainly provide that.
Yeah, I have. We can send that out to you guys.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But what I can give you a quick overview. It's mainly we start with the primaries and work our ways into the secondaries, and then finally into the cul-de-sacs and smaller roads that we can get on with the big 906 with the broom in front of it.
Do we do that work in-house?
Yes, we run our big. We have a broom that attaches to the front end of our 906.
And has this been done every year, or?
Yeah.
I guess I've never noticed one sweeping on Polo Park.
Okay.
In
I
the
know it. I know it is done.
almost
I know
4
it's been
years
done.
you've been
It was
here.
done. Yeah, I know it was done last spring as well. And I know it's been done this year. If you missed it, I don't know why or what, but I do know it was. This is an ongoing thing every year.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go look closer and see what.
If they didn't get it, I will find out why they didn't get Polo Parks. But
I mean, one of my biggest concerns is, since I've moved here, is our streets are already really narrow. And I've heard that we do sweeping efforts. I've only actually seen a sweeper once, but then again, I'm probably at work when they're doing that work. But I've only actually seen evidence of it going by once. And it seems like we're missing our edge of pavement with the sweeper, which at this point in the season, it's been 3 months basically since we laid sand. Most of that sand is migrated via tires and people driving over it to your edge of roads. And like, I know I, for one, always go out and shovel about a good foot of, like, when I first moved in 3 years ago, I shoveled like 24 wheelbarrows worth of road sand off of my frontage along Polo Park and like opened up like a foot of pavement that was buried underneath like what had turned to grass almost because so many years of accumulation.
AJ, you as a road guy and a county man, it would be really nice to have these edges cut and belt loaded and removed out. That would be perfect for the community.
I mean, yeah, I mean, shoulder picking would be ideal in a number of places that I've witnessed, and that's only the little bit that in the places that I drive. At this point, it's probably needed, you know, and then street sweeping diligently after that is done to maintain that edge of pavement so we're not losing it to the battle with Mother Nature.
Very true.
And then I feel like there's one other thing I had, but if anyone else has something, they can chime in. I don't remember what it is now off the top of my head.
Joe,
Well, you can come back to it whenever, even if you think of it later in the meeting.
I have
Joe,
one.
this is Linda. Oops.
Go ahead, Linda.
I just had a question. On page 15, we're talking about the marina, and there's a section here below the little calendars here for work where it talks about the old concrete dock. We're not talking about, that's not the one that's at the launch, correct?
That is a dock that appeared in our marina. And we pulled it out last year, and it is has since been abandoned. It's been here well over a year, so that's what that is. If you ever go to the marina, you'll see it. It sits right there by the one of the accesses, right at the end of the spit.
Well, okay, I was really confused about it, and I take it, how can a concrete dock just floated in? It must have been during one of the windstorms.
I don't, Linda, I don't know. One day it wasn't there, and one day it was. So it just floated in, and it was in the head of the marina. So we towed it and hooked it up and pulled it out of the water for safety of the marina.
Oh yeah, weird. Also, what's the whole story on the dumbwaiter? It's the next item below that, the old concrete dock. Are we going to have to abandon our dumbwaiter?
We are in the process of figuring out what we can do with it. It seems to be one person tells us one thing, another person tells us another thing. So we're working on to see if that we can decommission. If we can't decommission, what we have to do to keep it in place. It's been an ongoing issue for about 2-3 weeks now. We're just trying to really figure out with what we can do with it.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
I just had one more regarding the community center playground. And on here it says it will be completed within the next 2 weeks. Is that still accurate considering the...
We are, just so you know, we have, the association has been deemed an essential community. So it's an essential business, and that would fall under classification of public works. So yes, we will be continuing to work on that park.
Oh, good. Awesome.
Or
Well,
playground.
good time to finish it while no one can play on it. I've got 3 kids that are dying to go try out that new equipment. So
Yeah.
we got it all the time.
Ditto.
Yeah. We will actually, we will have somebody starting on that again tomorrow. Barring Mother Nature, but that is the plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got one more question. The street sweeping stuff, does that the money spent on that, is that covered under our capital culvert ditches and swales work?
Operations.
That's what we pay for currently under.
Mm-hmm.
Could that work that you guys were talking about, which I forgot the technical term, but where you remove some of that land material from the sites, could that fall under capital?
That would, I would say, if we were going to bring in a machine to cut the berm and belt load it out, that would be a capital expense.
Okay, something to think about. I think it would be.
Couldn't all of this stuff fall under that? We currently are being asked this meeting later on to bill staff time to the overhead tree stuff. And so I'm wondering, the street sweeping is a function of keeping the culverts clean.
Yeah,
I guess do we use a suction sweeper, or are we just using a broom that pushes it into the ditch?
broom.
We're using a broom, a rotary broom that attaches to the front of the 906.
So there's no suction.
No, no suction.
I've seen it out lots of times, AJ. I think you're just not home at the right time. But I see
I'm
it
just
out.
going based on what my edge of pavement looks like, and that road sand's all still sitting there.
All right.
Yeah, it makes a nice little thing to keep the water in the road.
Yeah.
Well, I
So-
don't want it in the road. I want it in the swales.
I hear you. We had a conversation. I'm ready to visit again when we get down to this capital request to ask you about some stuff, Joe.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'll answer it here, but here's what I know about the capital, why the ditches, culverts, and swales and that vegetative work is considered capital. It's because the amount of time that it takes to get around to it is several years. So you're not doing the same section multiple times a year like you would be sweeping. We do that multiple times a year, and our capital policy is, that it has a useful life of over a year and it costs more than a certain amount. So if it's something that we're doing repeatedly, like road mowing or sweeping, and we do it more than once per year, I think you might have a harder time making that distinction, saying that its useful life is more than a year. That would be my take on it.
I don't know. I mean, as far as whether you're going to throw it in capital or not, I've never seen road sweeping thrown into capital. Everywhere I've ever seen it was just operations.
Yeah, I'm just saying I've never seen ditch cleaning thrown into capital either. So
I
mean, if you're rebuilding drainage, then that's one thing, and we do have a fair amount of those projects. But
We do have the documents from both Newman and Larson Gross, two auditors on there justifying the capitalization of this project. And you'll find those start on pages 28. So you can take a look at those and see what is included in those.
Just to follow up on all this, I think that originally, and you can look back in the views, there used to be time when if there was enough money in operations, hey, they'd work on the roadside ditches and swales. There's pictures of it. Other years when the money's not there and it was just operational, then it would be let go. And sometimes that was for 2 or 3 years. And it's part of why we find ourselves where we're at. I kind of like the idea of it being done all the time. I want to add to it, but I'll wait for that to be talked about.
If you look at page 30 on the Larson Gross report, it says that at this point in time, the maintenance to the same area would not occur more than every 3 to 5 years. And since we do road sweeping every year, that's why I don't think it would fall into this category.
Mike, if you're trying to say something, it looks like you're muted. Okay.
What he said
go
is,
ahead and
what he said is we're spending more time talking about sweeping than actual sweeping.
Yep. Do we want to any further questions for Joe on the GM report?
I had one other quick question. I just remembered the Southern Court failure. That's all cleared up now.
Yeah, that is all. The rocks are down off the mountain, and they are, as you see in the pictures, they're pushed across the road to the other side. I believe I got to check with Bruce, but I think we're going to try to break those up and get those out in pieces once they're on the ground.
Is that portion part of the closed portion? Is that still closed?
No, that's below the closed part. That was where we had our landslide last, I think August, September maybe, when it slid out. That is below the closed section though, or section.
Is that section still closed?
No, the closed section?
Yeah.
Yes, that's still closed. We had it open temporarily for emergency access when we were doing the work on those rocks, but it is closed again.
Okay, and then did those rocks do any damage to our roadway? They look pretty large.
No, they took them down and just they did a nice job with getting them off the mountain.
Oh, so they didn't fall; they were pulled out.
They were pulled out. They were getting ready to fall, so we went in and had them removed so that they wouldn't damage the road, and we could control what damage would be done coming off the mountain.
All right, that's good. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Joe? Okay, we'll go ahead and move into our capital request for our vegetation control. Joe, Wesley?
Yeah, let me get started on this. One of the things that we collect funds for is for this culvert and vegetation control. And it was something that the members voted on quite some time ago. So we basically have authorization to collect the money. This is simply a request to the board to spend some of that money. And Joe, why don't you explain what we're doing this year and some of the pages in the packet.
Okay. What you see is the total cost this year is $164,611. That includes a $54,230 rollover of unspent monies from last year, because we could not get everything done. So the process this year is to try to get 2 crews to run and get it caught up to where we need to be and stay on track. In this, you'll see the maps of what has been done and where we're going to be going this year. But this is, again, this is something that was voted on by the association years ago, and this is just a continuation of that process.
I'll start out by making the motion that the board approve the recommendation of the Finance Committee to approve a roads allocation not to exceed $164,611 to perform major maintenance of ditches, culverts, and swales in 2020.
Second.
Discussion.
Joe, this is where I wanted to ask the question, and it kind of has to do with what AJ was saying, is that we end up with these curbs of dirt, sand, and stuff on the edge of the roads. There's some places it's not bad, but there's other places that it is. And when I know they've already been up on Gate 5, up on Wisteria where I am, and across the street from me, it's so obvious. But is there any way, if we're going to try and fully spend our money, to take a look at the areas that are being scheduled for each year and do that to where we scrape it down to where the water is going into the ditches rather than being forced back onto the center of the roads?
Yeah, we can look into that. That's not a hard issue. Your stuff was done when, Linda?
We were the guinea pigs.
that's not good. No, I mean
we were done the first year that was implemented.
Okay. Yeah, I can get with Bruce and the crews, and we can definitely evaluate while they're cutting and they're cleaning, and make sure that we do get all those ridges cut back down, and so the water will flow off. That's something I can put into the scope of work while they're going.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd second that. I think it'd be a good idea to try to look at, if we're in that area, what we can do. I know on Polo Park near Gate 13, there's a big low point in the road. It goes up and down, and that low point just has that buildup. And, it's to the point now where the buildup is gotten so bad that I don't even think the street sweeper would get rid of that stuff, even if you were out over it, because the vegetation and stuff has started to grow on it. There's obvious failure patches that have been made in that area, in the past, likely because water just sits on the road and deteriorates the pavement.
The macadam.
And so capturing those areas would be really good. If we can do that work simultaneously while we already got the flaggers and everything out there, even if that looks like we have to hire a crew, or a contractor to come in and do that work while we're doing our veg maintenance or something like that.
Yeah, we can definitely look at better ways to get those edges cut out and still not try not to well, we can't exceed the 164, but yeah, we definitely can look into some better ways to get those areas cleaned up.
And then so you said that the request includes 54,000 from unspent previous years.
From last year.
How much money are we bringing in each year in that fund?
Well, this year, if you minus the 54, you're about 110 and change.
Because when I look at like our capital reporting for the last kind of few years, we're always in that like $150,000-$160,000 range. And so I'm wondering how 50,000 additional dollars doesn't put us at like 200 some thousand. And when I look back at the capital reporting spreadsheets, I don't see that we've spent all of the monies that have been approved in any year as of yet. It seems like there should be significantly more than $54,000 rolling over.
AJ?
I can get you that number, AJ. I don't have it here in front of me right now.
AJ, what I was going to say, that amount of money is $3.01 for every single person, whether you're developed or undeveloped here in Sudden Valley. With the current number of lots that we have, it means that if we collect it all this year, which we won't, it would be $113,381. But the first year they got a late start on it because they were waiting for the hydrovac. And it usually has been, so basically you're looking at around 110 to 113,000. They're spending about half of that, and half of it's, they just can't expend it because they're not hiring enough to fulfill all the work that needs to get done in the time frame that it gets done.
I mean, because when I'm looking at, so 2016 was the year we started. Our capital reporting for end of 2016 shows 68,000 being approved by the board, but only 13,000 actually being invoiced on that year. When you go to 2000
now, hold on, Linda, did that include the purchase of the truck?
No, that was a completely separate amount of money that we spent. And it was only for like a year and a half or a year and 8 months, something like that. The hydrovac was a completely separate item on that. There were three separate, there were two capital sort of requests. One was limited for the purchase of the hydrovac. Then there was the culverts and swales, and then there was an operational amount of dues. That first year that we started collecting, I believe that was an SGM that took place, wow, I want to say in March and April maybe. So we didn't even collect a full year that first year. There wasn't a full year of collections.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I guess I would like to know how much money we actually have in this fund, because when I look at the capital reporting spreadsheets that I was given, I see 54,000 in 2016 not being spent. In 2017, I see, let me see, where's that? I see almost $46,000 not being spent. In 2018, there is another 28,000 not being spent. And then in 19, there is yeah, about 54,000, basically what you've rolled over. And so I'm curious as to how those numbers all add up to only 54,000 being rolled over. Seems like there should be triple that amount still available in the account based on the spreadsheets that I have.
I don't think the request is necessarily how much is available. It's how much they think they're going to spend this year, which is a basis of 2 crews. I mean, we could have more, I suppose, but even still, since this was voted on by the membership, that money is still set aside, even if we use it in future years. So in 2021, we could use whatever we collect that year plus some additional backlog if this 2 crew thing works out. I think you're correct. Well, I know you are. That every year we haven't spent all of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean we intend to spend everything that we have collected to date in 2020.
And that makes sense. I understand the request is not to spend whatever is left in that pot of money. I would like to see what is in that pot of money compared to what's being requested right now. And I would like to know, why aren't we spending it every year? You know, this money, saving it doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't benefit anything. The cost benefit of pushing work out to future years just costs more. And so we should be trying to spend that money in its entirety every single year to get the most for that money. Because
that's why
future years will always cost more. And so I'm curious, if there is this excess amount of money in that pot, can we do some additional work this summer to spend that on, say, what we were just discussing with the shoulder picking, you know, working on some of these ditches that clearly have drainage issues? And
Well,
maybe that's as simple as just hiring a contractor to do something. Maybe that's not as simple with everything that's going on right now, but the contractors do seem to be working. Hello?
And AJ, I agree with the concept of what you're saying. The information that I would like to see, though, is if there is a surplus from one year and it is rolled over to the next year, does that just get folded in? And so the surplus from that year is just rolled forward instead of accruing every year. And I think that's the piece of information that you're missing and that I would also be interested in.
Mike, sorry to chime in here. If you're trying to talk to the board, we can't hear you.
Hey, Mike, come out here. Come here, Mike. Come here.
He was waving his hand, so I thought this time he might be wanting to chime in.
Leslie, I think if you look at some of if we would go back and look at many of the capital requests for this particular project, I think you will see that every year it tells about how much money is collected, but what the rollover from the prior year is. I can remember some of these, and I think every one of them's written much as the one that we're looking at.
Yeah, Linda, I don't have the documents in front of me, and I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Thank you.
Mr. President, it's point of order.
Yep.
The fact that these are legitimate concerns and they need to be addressed. The motion on the floor is not such that they can be discussing this for 15 minutes. The motion on the floor is for the money allocated. Let's please stay on task.
Thanks, Mike. Any further discussion? Hearing, oh, go ahead.
I'm just curious on the second map that you provided with the culvert and ditch planning map. Am I correct in saying that the blue is all we've accomplished since 2016?
Yes, you are correct.
Why have we accomplished almost nothing, I guess?
A lot of it is lack of crew, so that's why we're trying to run 2 crews this year, AJ. One crew will do strictly vegetation, and the other crew will run strictly ditches.
Okay.
So I can get caught up. They are behind.
Okay. And then what are the two little kind of maps after that? I'm not 100% sure I understand what are these improvements that you're making? Is that the ditch cleaning? There's no legend on there for like blue arrow, yellow line, red line, but there's the old legend that was put together, as part of the paper document. This is your ditch cleaning effort, and then the other map is your culvert cleaning area?
Yeah, these look like culverts. Yeah, the yellows are your crossover culverts, and the other stuff will be your ditches. You can see the blue lines is where the water flows.
That stuff we're doing maintenance to, though, through this, Bunny?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can we call the question? All those in favor of the capital request,
Aye.
please by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you.
Can I ask, we brought up a lot of points, and I think we've determined that we do have some money still in this fund. Can that be something that is brought forward at a later date to kind of take care of some of these ongoing issues with the roads using
Karen, at any given time, I can always come back to finance and request more money from capital, and then bring it back through the board, just like we did tonight.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can you provide us with the documents on the monies that is available in that account?
We can, I'll get with Joel and we'll get that. Yeah, we can get, I'll get with Joel and we'll get that figured out and broken down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea, AJ. Okay, next up is our financial statements for January. Is Joel on the line?
Joel is there. Are you there, Joel?
Can you hear me? I think they're changing seats.
We can hear you.
Okay. So if you turn, I'm just going to go right into the January financial statements. If you turn to page 32, I'll just start with the balance sheet and I'll just quickly go over this. Nothing really too excited with this. Total current assets up approximately $21,000. Net operating assets up about $22,000. Total net assets are up about 1.42 million. If you turn the next page to the income statement, page 33, so the thing with this, you'll see the collection rate for January is 86.5%. January is historically the lowest month for collections. Last year was 88.4%. The total revenue is $362,000. Last year was approximately $343,000. Total expenses $268,400. Last year's approximately $212,000. So the big bottom line for this would be our net income is $94,000. Last year's $130,000, $131,000 approximately. The expenses to revenues ratio, I've been talking about that over the past few months at least, which just means what is the ratio of expenses to revenues? So this month it is in January 74%. Last year is 62%, which a lower number is always better. And this is attributable to the weather snow event. So like in operations better or worse, you'll see under contracted professional services, maintenance and landscaping, that is all largely pretty much that weather situation.
Joel, I apologize for interrupting here. We've had somebody else join by telephone to the board meeting. If I could ask who this is.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the person who's called in on via telephone, last number is 436.
I think that might have been the same person that was under attendees.
Yeah, I believe so as well. I'm not certain who this is.
Can you just move them back to attendees?
Let's see.
Or you could just, I think as the host, you can just mute them.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll just go ahead and leave them muted. Okay. Looks like it's taking care of it. All right, you can go ahead, resume there.
Quick question on that. So is that a number that anybody could call into if that person was originally an attendee rather than a board member? As you, the attendees and board members all have the same number?
So no, that's this person must. I'm wondering if it's somebody actually in the office who's trying to connect to our audio.
Gotcha.
If they're still trying to troubleshoot that over there.
You know what, John? Hold on. It's me. I'm the one that's been calling in.
Okay.
I've been trying to fix Mike's problem, and it's fixed. So the problem is I didn't have an attendee ID, and so it was making him an attendee with no ability and muted throughout the meeting.
Right.
And instead, I used my own attendee ID, and now he can talk.
Okay.
So all of those attempts are me trying to fix his problem, and now it's fixed.
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa.
And so the last 3 digits of that phone number are Joe's direct office phone number.
No.
Everybody write that down quick.
No,
So Mike,
erase
could
that
you-
number quickly. Erase that quickly.
Yeah. Mike, could you chime in quickly so that we know that
Hey,
this is real?
Josh, no pens. I saw you writing. No, Josh.
Mike, can you speak so that we know we can hear you?
I'm here.
Oh, see, it works.
All right.
There we go.
All right, we can unmute the 436 line.
There we go.
Please continue, Joel. Sorry for.
Okay. Now I'm going to start all over again with the balance sheet. No, I'm just kidding. I'll spare you. Now, page 34, we're going to skip that for now because we're going to come back to that because now this page starts becoming important. So we'll turn to page 35. And we're just going to talk about the current month sheet because it doesn't make any difference since the year-to-date is exactly the same for January. I'll just talk about a couple of quick things. Of course, I'll talk about golf. Revenues for golf last year was approximately 147,000. This year is 158,000, increase of 12,000. Expenses for golf this year about 47,000. Last year is about 42,000, 43,000. So increase of about 3,902. Net income for golf is approximately $112,000. Last year is around 104,000. So we're still increasing with golf. Recs, pools, parks, net income 11,000 for the year. So they're better than budget by about $4,000. Now, in terms of like departments, for example, ACC security over budget about 19,000. Maintenance over budget by about 32,000. Once again, now we're getting back. We're just seeing this at the departmental level, the weather events, which is primarily where they were hitting in. If we turn back to page 34 and we look at our cash balances here, and AJ was talking about the roads. Like if we have a separate account for the CVC stuff. We do not. It's commingled in with roads. That's just tracked separately. Now all the cash balances for surf roads, capital reserve holding account, emergency ops UDR, mailboxes. These are all up from last year at this time, which is good. Now in terms of just to give you some numbers, I don't know if Leslie shared with you these numbers, but for example, for April, like if you're wondering how much money does that take away from operations for waiving the operating dues? For operations, that comes out to, and this is at the 92% budgeted collection rate, that comes out to $199,346. For SURF, that's $213,890.
Yeah, I was going to do that at a later point in the agenda.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right.
I guess I gave you
I
a
hear him
primer.
twice.
Yeah. Now
What
this,
about roads?
go ahead to someone. So now this kind of
How about the
concludes
roads
the
amount?
overall
You gave the ops
top
amount
level of the
from SURF.
numbers. Say that again, Linda?
You gave the amount for April for ops and for surf. What about roads? It's a biggie.
Linda, we're
Okay,
going to
so-
talk about this with I have all of these numbers here. When we talk about the waiver of dues for April and projecting going forward.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Go ahead, Joel.
I'm done with the financial statements in terms of,
Okay.
so basically what I just hit on there are the highlights of it.
Okay. Questions from anybody?
Ooh, I've got one.
Yeah.
So we collected at only 86%. And it's interesting because while operations and ops only was a negative, you've got the special assessment income that actually had a profit over budget rather than a loss. And I wonder, how does that happen?
Say that again?
So if I look at page 33, it says up here that we collected at 86.5%, and we were worse than budget in operations by $10,177. If I go down and look at the special assessment, they had their collection, but they actually had, and they actually came out with a positive additional $1,725. And I wondered, how do we do that?
Well, this also comes down to the bad debt reserve, what hits in the bad debt reserve for those calculations. So when someone puts a payment into us, the payment is applied like by charge code in their account. And this could very well be just a situation of, okay, and you know, this is precisely what can trigger this is some people still accidentally pay like a lower amount of dues, the last year's dues. It's just an accident on their part. But so that gets applied to their accounts, and when it gets applied in terms of like a priority order for charge codes, in terms of, you know, like hitting the dues, surf, ops, or roads, so on and so forth. So if it runs out of stuff to apply it to, then this is what can cause a situation like this.
Okay, it just was really something unusual to see, because usually the special assessment also drops down. The other thing I wanted to ask, and I don't know when you intend on doing this, there's a rollover from 2019 for the special assessment. And I think Karen and I both touched upon this a little bit of how is that going to be applied. I see how it's done with the culverts, ditches, and swales, but how's it going to be done for the operations budget for the special assessment?
So the special assessment from last year is what
Yes,
you're
because
obviously referring to. Yeah.
At the end of the year, they had collected an additional, if I'm reading this
Right.
correctly, $31,200.
Right. So the special assessment, like any surpluses right now, is just rolled into and sitting in cash. So basically, if you go to the balance sheet, it's going to be sitting in that very first line item, operating cash.
Okay. Will it finally get dispersed then to them for their operations, their operating use in 2020?
Oh, sure. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Hey, Joel, are you done? Linda, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yep, I'm done, I think, for now.
I'm just curious, how will we see that on financial statements once we decide, okay, we're going to apply exactly this much from 2019 to 2020, you know, rec operations? How would we see that on the financial statements? Or is it just something that we note and we always know we have this little bit of money that can only be spent on rec?
Well, basically, you could think about it becoming a part of retained earnings. So, like if a fund has, let's just say, you know, they made $10,000, then that's adding to the retained earnings of the fund.
Okay.
So go ahead, Linda.
I was going to say, we won't necessarily see it on the income statement.
No, yeah,
Okay.
you would not see that on the income statement
Okay.
on the next year. That would just be sitting in the retained earnings of the organization.
Okay.
And then let's just say we posted like a loss, then that is in a sense eating into the retained earnings.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if, so like when we have our balance sheet here and we talked, was it in the finance committee meeting and we talked about, you know, let's put some notes or maybe some footnotes or whatever. I wonder if that would be something worth calling out, both the rec special assessment, like this amount of retained earnings is designated for recreation. And then the same with the roads, this conversation that we just had, this amount is designated specifically for the CVC work, just as footnotes in these financial statements. So we're aware that we're keeping track of it, because it's kind of a question that comes up over and over. When people know that they voted on something, they want to make sure that that money is applied appropriately. And I think it's being done, but it's kind of hard to show it when it's not. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to show it, I guess. So I'm trying to think of a way to make it obvious in our financial statements.
Actually, okay, this is how it works. Like if you look down to the member equity section, like under the 2019 column, so you'll see current year net income from operations 55,731.
Yeah.
And then current year net income rec special assessment 23,576.
Okay.
If you add those two numbers, now you see the retained earnings 4,642,255, like a couple lines down below that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you added those top two lines to that 4.6 million, on the column to the left of that, the retained earnings, now it becomes 4.72 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sum of those three amounts. So that's how it's rolling over.
Okay. So yeah. Yeah. I see how the rec is called out. I think it would be good to maybe call out this portion of roads too, but without making our financials too confusing. So anyway, that makes sense. It makes sense on this this balance sheet here.
Okay.
Any further? Well, Joel, were you finished with your report?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. Any further questions for Joel before we move on? Okay, we'll move into our committee reports. ACC looks like. Well, go ahead, ACC.
Yeah, minutes are as submitted. They are posted. I sent everyone in the board the package of the 3 volunteers to fill the vacancy. That was, the cutoff was the 20th of March. The committee has discussed and reviewed these, and we are requesting that you approve Keith McLean as our new committee member to fill the vacancy that we have right now.
Is there a motion to approve?
Sorry, I was distracted. Can you say that again?
Are you talking to Andrew or me?
You, are we asking, so you're asking to approve?
The committee is asking you to approve Keith McLean as our new committee member.
Okay, I will move to approve Keith McLean for ACC.
Second.
I second that.
There's a first and a second. Can we approve by acclamation?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rich.
That's all I have.
Fantastic. Looks like other committees, communications document review, emergency, will finance has minutes and approval of 2 committee members. Go ahead.
Yes, minutes as posted. And we did receive 10 applications for the Finance Committee. I asked each one of them to fill out a further questionnaire with some information, and I did get 4 people who did send those back. And from them, I would move that you approve Lori Sampson and Trang Warline as the 2 new Finance Committee members.
Second that.
Can we approve by acclamation?
Yes.
Yes,
Perfect. Thank you. Anything further, Leslie?
no, that's it.
Great. We'll move into nominations and elections. Looks like there's some meeting minutes.
As submitted.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, any other committees?
Parks and Trails and Emergency Preparedness, neither of their minutes have been approved yet. That's why they're not submitted online. I also have a volunteer's name for Parks and Rec. Her name is Elise Rylander. I make a motion she be accepted as a volunteer for Parks and Rec.
Second.
Again, by acclamation, assuming this individual's been vetted.
Aye.
She has.
Perfect. Okay, we'll move into our new business. Earlier in the meeting, we already approved the emergency declaration, which also included the April dues waiver. But we did add an agenda item to discuss further emergency measures. So in light of the coronavirus, I think we want to open it up to any questions the board members have about what we need to do to stay proactive at this time.
I want to start out by providing some information about having waived the dues for April, what that means. We looked at the amount of budgeted dues revenue that was waived in April at 92% which is per the 2020 budget. We will have $199,346 budgeted dues for operations. And this comprises both regular ops and the rec special assessment. The budgeted dues for capital for 1 month are $213,890. And this comprises surf, roads, and mailboxes. Now, the operations shortfall is being got to be made up as follows. The operational year-to-date surplus can absorb the initial brunt of the shortfall. Plus, as of the end of February, our operations surplus is $82,000. So that is one chunk that will go towards making up the operations shortfall. Secondly, ops expenditures can be tightened up to make up some more of this shortfall. And it may or may not go, to as much as we need to cover everything that we need. As a last resort, the association has approximately $604,000 of reserves between emergency operations and UDR that could be utilized in an emergency. The capital shortfall can be absorbed through curtailing identified projects that aren't deemed critical during 2020. Now, I will send this out to the full board. I didn't get this put together until almost the meeting, so you wouldn't have a copy. And this is just a start. This is for April. And we don't know where we're going at this point. I mean, this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on and maybe talk about at every board meeting as this whole emergency situation goes forward.
Leslie, I have a question. You talked about the ops surplus. As my understanding was, we were planning on taking that surplus from 2019, I'm assuming you're talking about.
No, I'm not. No, the surplus that I'm talking about is 2020. At the end of February this year, at the end of, there we do have an 80, how much is that?
It'll be approximately 82,000.
Yeah, approximately $82,000 surplus from this year. This does not touch any of the surplus from last year. That is in a cash fund waiting to be spent for the to pay down the loan as the board budgeted, as the board voted on.
I guess, I thank you for that, because we haven't seen any of those February, we're not looking even at the month of February yet. Something I wanted to say, when Jennifer was here, and for years, the board used to look at financials only 1 month back. And currently we're looking at, we're just looking at January now, when normally we'd be looking at February financials. I think when we had the little temporary gal in here, and I cannot remember her name, and right before Joel took over, I think we got behind for the month of July or August. And it's like ever since then, we've just been staying back 2 months. But I'm saying I can go back and look at prior packets for prior years, and we used to only be looking at 1 month back, and we'd be looking at February right now. And I wonder if somehow we can catch up, whether that means next month we take a look so that we're looking at February and March, because
Linda, that's a good idea, and I would like to look into doing that. Right now, that's not the topic of this discussion. It is going forward with this whole coronavirus issue and how we're going to address that as we move forward.
That's the whole point. If
Leslie?
you don't have accurate and up-to-date and the most current financials we can have, how do you do that if you're working 2 months
Hey,
back?
Linda. Linda, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Oh yeah. Hey, Linda, I was just going to say that's a great idea, and you will see over the next couple of months things catching back up on that sort of a schedule.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing we talked about this a little at the finance committee meeting, I guess, just keeping an eye on this, and we had talked about it even months prior, unrelated to all this COVID stuff, but was kind of this idea of doing a re-forecast. And I think probably won't help us get caught up with our financials, but I think that this might be a situation where it would be warranted to do a higher level re-forecast where we have some changes in our revenue, obviously, with the April waiver of dues, with the golf course getting shut down for a couple of months. And what is the impact on our expenses? I think we're going to have to keep a closer eye on that. And maybe continually do some projections looking forward so that, like Linda's saying, we're making decisions based on the most accurate, up-to-date information we have, not necessarily just actuals, but our best projections based on the current information we have, not what we decided last June or July or August, from budget. We kind of need to rejigger this thing a little bit and have kind of a forecast, I think, that's going to be more accurate based on this landscape that we're looking at now and not what we thought even 1 month ago, because it's continually changing.
I think I agree with that. I think a rolling forecast makes a lot of sense where we're looking at that month by month to change the accountability on it.
Yeah, I agree with kind of what Linda was saying too, and Karen. I mean, yeah, getting a little bit more of a forecast would be, I think, really helpful. Who puts that together? Is that staff or the finance team? How do we, let's play that out a little bit. What does that look like? And what are the deadlines so that we can have a discussion around that?
I think you're muted.
That's a staff activity. The staff needs to be directed to do that.
I mean, I guess I haven't even seen like numbers of how this impacts anything. Have we been provided? Did I miss an email or something that we were provided that kind of showed the impact of just what the April?
No, you weren't.
Dues
And
are?
as I said, this is a document that didn't get put together until just before the meeting, and therefore it hasn't been sent out to you. I did read you the information from it, and I will send it out to the board.
But even still, it's continually changing, AJ. So, you base something on this was our surplus then, and then we have, we shut down golf. And so, our impact to revenue is going to be even different than just this dues now. But so might our expenses. And so we're going to have to, it's not a snapshot thing that we can do. We're going to have to continually be looking at it, at least on a monthly basis. And so I think that's probably what we need to do, is direct staff to do this and then appropriately prioritize for them how this should be prioritized compared to, I mean, obviously not the regular run of the mill stuff, but if it's getting detailed financials, or do we want a really accurate higher level forecast? For me, I would rather have a really accurate higher level forecast rather than having an income statement with 10 departments and 20 line items, because that's not so important to me as the bottom line at this point in time, to be able to make decisions for, going forward. What can we do for our membership? What can we do to make sure that we are properly taking care of our community assets and stuff? And so there's just a lot of things to balance. And anyway, that's my take on it.
Hey, Karen.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just like to say, because Joe and I, even today, like basically for the first time, have been taking a really close look at this situation, since obviously this is a very new situation. So this is something that, especially with a loss of dues revenue for a month in April, is something that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on, especially with expenses and especially with non-operating dues or non-operating revenue like golf and so on and so forth. So this is kind of a fluid situation, and at some degree at this point we don't know yet in terms of what the ramifications will be. So which means we have to keep a close eye on it.
Yeah. So is that something that you can provide to us on an ongoing basis? I mean, you and Joe were probably already looking at it. It probably makes more sense for you to show us what we need to know rather than us to tell you what we think we need at this point, because you guys are much more familiar with the situation and our financials in general.
Yeah, Karen, Joel and I are tearing this apart daily, and we will provide you guys with the information of the high-level view of where we're going to be. And this is a very fluid thing. We are going to basically shut down any expenditures that do not need to be done. It'll be kind of like the old spending plans that you guys are very accustomed to, and we will monitor this weekly and then monthly, and we will have a very good handle on once golf gets open. I know you said 2 months. I don't know if it'll be 2 months, and I wouldn't want to even put that out there right at this moment. But
I don't think
there's a good.
Sorry.
You said 2 months, and I kind of was like, I don't know if we'll be down for 2 months. And the other thing is, if right now we're still 8 weeks out before the pool's open, so there's a good possibility we may not lose any pool revenue. And last year, if everybody remembers, we went through 6 weeks of a complete shutdown with no golf revenue, and we still made our numbers at the end. The only thing that's going to impact us on golf will be the loss of some big outings due to the fact that they just don't know when they're going to be here or if they're not going to be able to get done. But Joel and I are tearing this apart, and we will give you guys constantly the 10,000-foot overview of where we stand at any given moment as far as income and expenses and projections and what the bottom line will look like at the end of the year based off of scenarios.
Hey, Joe, I know Norm touched on this a little bit, and you guys are looking at that FEMA grant, and you're going to be keeping track of everything. Do you have have they given you any sort of ETA of when, if you were, if we're accepted with that, how long it takes to get the... I have not got any information on that. That will be stuff, once I get the full information on that, of their timelines and what we might expect in return, that'll definitely be put out to the board as soon as Norm and I get information on that. We will definitely put that out. Okay, thank you.
Hey, just for the record, I didn't mean to say golf was shut down for 2 months. I meant 2 weeks. I promise. I know nothing. I don't know anything about anything. Sorry.
I was like, oh no. I'm truly hoping not 2 months that we're shut down. I do not want to go 8 weeks, 8 more weeks with no operations.
Right. Exactly. Sorry. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I did not even mean.
That's okay.
I don't
not emotion.
either.
Okay.
I was like, maybe you knew something I don't know.
I know nothing at all.
I just sent that, those numbers, the April numbers, to the whole board in case you've got a second source to look.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
I guess this is just Lisa, you are probably all over this, but what are you anticipating for possible upfront expenditures under the Families First protections that have been put in? I mean, I know that at the end of the year or maybe next year, those will have a tax credit associated with them. But as we're looking at our rolling, as we're looking at what are our costs up front and how are those affecting us and how is that going to affect a rolling budget, I assume that you're taking a look at that because we don't know exactly how those are going to hit at this time.
Well, what we've done preemptively is we have created a new paid time off code in our payroll system. So where we have jury duty, bereavement, vacation, personal time, and sick time. We've added another code, which is Public Health 20-0256, which is the FEMA code for any expenses that are related to the coronavirus. And so if we do have salaried employees or other employees that are forced to work from home, and we have many at this point, and they don't actually work their full 8-hour day, then they request the time off under this specific code so that we can track any amounts that we are paying employees to not work. And with that end, it's to apply those expenses to the FEMA relief at the end of the year. At this point, because we do comply with FMLA just because we're kind of right on the cusp of 50 employees 4 months out of the year, but we're not under that requirement, so we don't actually have to do do FMLA because we're under 50 employees.
But for the Family First, it's for all numbers of employees, even those that are not normally subject to FMLA.
No, right. No, I'm speaking specifically to the payroll though, because we're yeah. I'm sorry, because we are monitoring very closely what the employees that we have working continually because we are an essential organization. Everyone that can work from home is working from home. But as I said, we do know that there are times when we've got employees working from home where they're not going to make they're not going to work a full 8 hours from home. Okay. And so what we're doing our best to do is track what hours we're paying to not work.
Right.
So when they elect this code, say they've only worked 6.5 hours and they need the other hour and a half or whatever to make their 8 hours.
Right.
They request this paid time off under the public health. Which means they're not accruing any more vacation time. They're not accruing any more benefits while they're not working.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we were tracking that so that if anybody was on that because we have to pay for it up front, that it doesn't track to a rolling budget as an expense when it's going to be credited at the back end.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. All right.
And at this point. And we are hopefully. We're looking at this as though we're only going to be 2 weeks. We know that it's probably going to be more.
Yeah. Okay.
But everybody, except for 2 staff members who are part-time regular employees, meaning that they're year-round part-time, everyone else has some ability to work from home.
Okay.
So we don't have any staff that are just sitting at home getting paid.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I've got a question. We talked about funds that were available to offset any losses we might have. And one of the funds we talk about is the emergency of the operating reserves. And emergency ops has the 356 or 152 in there right now. And then there's some interest. What I wanted to say is we've got that $100,000 CD that backs up our payroll. Does that mean that we only can use anything less that amount of money because the 100,000 has to stay in there in the CD?
Well, that CD is not a part of the emergency operations.
That's where it comes out of. That's where when they made the request for that money, that's where it came out of, was the emergency ops account.
Matter of fact, I'm going to look into that CD.
That's
I know
fine.
precisely the CD you're talking about.
There was, when we switched over to the new payroll company that we needed to, it came up and it was actually, they did a board vote on it, that they needed $100,000 CD to, it's like a backup to this company for our payroll that we do for them somehow. I didn't completely understand it, but I know that it exists.
Yeah, I will. I'm going to. I know precisely the CD that you're talking about. I'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
I guess I was looking at what Leslie provided and stuff, and I had said this previously, but I guess I'd like to know, you know, this obviously to me doesn't feel like we're waiving dues for April, but what happens after April, May, June, if things get significantly worse, you know, some information on how that's going to look to our budget and what sort of options we have if that becomes a reality that we're looking at, you know, waiving additional dues besides just 1 month.
I'm going to suggest that we bring this topic forward at every single one of our board meetings and checking the status of the finances and of the situation in the world. I don't think there's any way that we can project right now what's going to happen. We're just going to have to monitor it and to take action going forward as we need to.
I agree with that. I just like to put one thing out there I have heard from a lot of people so grateful that the dues were waived for April. Obviously, we unanimously voted to go forward with that. I think it was the right thing to do. One of the things that I've also heard from people, though, is that they wish that they had the option to not do that because they were not affected. Their household wasn't affected, and they absolutely could have paid their dues because they were not affected. And so I know when we had the furlough issue, we had a few years back, what we voted for was to allow people that had a hardship to contact contact and then waive their due. I think at that point, actually, we put them out to pay them later. But I'd like to suggest that we at least consider something like that because it was a surprising handful of people that I heard from that said, we absolutely would have paid our dues because we're not affected, or we could have put that towards other people that are having an issue within the community. So just something to consider.
May I offer just a little bit of input on that? Just because because we're down to one admin person, I'm receiving all the payments that are coming in, and many people are paying their April dues, many of them. And even though they're waiting waived, I said, you know, I said, well, it'll be credited to your account. And they're like, okay, that's fine, but we need the income. So lots of people are still paying their April dues.
Yeah. Yeah, I was shocked at how many people I heard that from.
But probably equal numbers are just beyond thrilled that they get some relief.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah, Paul, I agree with what you said that it's so fluid, it's so changing so much. And I think even when it was announced, there were people that since have been affected that didn't even think that they would have been. But we're going to have to find that balance of community members versus the community itself. And, making sure we're taking care of things and making sure that we're pretty lucky that we have the cash and the reserve balances that we do, that we even have that option right now. But I think going forward, something like you're saying, if this extends on for a long time, having it be more of an elective thing of people that are specifically impacted by it, because maybe not everybody is, and just kind of continuing to keep a look that way, because there might be quite a few people that aren't impacted and are willing to pay and even want to make sure that we have that buffer and that cash and the good solid financial position to be able to help those that do need it.
One of the things we also don't know is what the effect of the government stimulus package is going to have, because apparently there's going to be cash going to everybody, and I don't know what the details of that are either.
Or when they'll even see it. There's times people say 2 weeks, and there's other people are saying from the federal government, it's not going to be until late April.
Yeah.
Maybe 86.5% is going to be the new normal, guys. I think we hope for the best and you plan for the worst.
We just monitor
Yeah.
regular.
Yeah.
Hey, Linda,
Yes.
by the way, so I looked at the coding on that CD, and that is in emergency operating cash.
So we would have to leave that.
It's
101
101, 145. Yeah, it's approximately 101,000,
Yep. Okay.
which means emergency ops and UDR 502,501 in terms of like liquid cash.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion before we move into property owner comments? Okay, sounds like a lot more information will be coming our way. We got some details from Leslie that we can all review, and I know Joe mentioned earlier he and Joel are working on some more forecasts that we can look forward to in the future. Good conversation. I think we'll go into our property owner comments at this time.
Okay, anyone? I guess it's Nancy. Anything else for tonight? Yeah, it doesn't look like she's got her hand raised. So that may be all for property owners' comments.
Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, everyone. Great conversation, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Health, stay safe.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Stay home, stay safe.
Yeah, stay home.
Bye, everybody.